Nobody tells you that when you get the flu vaccine, though. Nobody says,
no one at all.
Hey, the only way this is really going to be beneficial is by you doing your part, like get sleep.
So if I was giving out the flu vaccine, the first question I should ask is, have you slept 8 hours a night for the last 6 nights?
And if not?
Then come back, please, after you get 6 hours. Hey guys, Dr. Jeff here from Newman Chiropractic and Maureen from Maureen's Meals. And we are here today to talk about sleep because that's the focus of the month for March 2020. And there's really no better time to talk about sleep and what we want to talk about today with sleep because of flu season, right? And everyone's all concerned about the COVID-19 coronavirus, right? So that's a upper respiratory condition. So sleep plays a huge role in how our immune system functions, right? So even a healthy body should be able to fight off most things that we end up encountering. So we want to make sure our immune systems are functioning at 100% at all times. So to start out with some sleep information, sleep statistics, is the World Health Organization has now classified a sleep loss epidemic across industrialized nations. So that's us.
Crazy.
All right, so humans are built to sleep 8 hours every 24 hours, right? So we are not nocturnal animals. We actually secrete melatonin and have a circadian rhythm that coincides with the rising of the sun and the setting of the sun. Nowadays, because we have candle light and then artificial light now, we can do a lot at night, right? But we were never designed to do that, right? So the shape of our eyeballs, the way that our irises function, right, are different than cats and other nocturnal animals. I mean, and you can see that humans are just not nocturnal animals. So we need to make sure that we get our sleep, and it's super valuable. So one of the things with the sleep loss epidemic that we've also found is that without adequate sleep, the chance of cancer has drastically risen. So our ability to fight off infection and develop our ability to fight off cancer or fight off sickness diminishes, and our ability to fight off any cancer cell growth diminishes, right? So the World Health Organization has also recently classified any type of nighttime shift work as a possible carcinogen. And the reason that is because if you have inadequate sleep, your natural killer cells, which are the big guys in taking care of cancer cell development and viral cell development, natural killer cells take care of those guys, right? So there's this doctor here, Dr. Michael Irwin at University of California. He found that on a single night of 4 hours of sleep, such as going to bed at 3 a.m. and waking at 7 a.m., it destroys 70% of our natural killer cells circulating in our immune system, right? So that's a good portion of our immune system right there. So with all the concerns we have about everyone getting sick these days, one of the first things that we can do is actually get adequate sleep, get those 8 hours of sleep. So what we want to do today is we're going to talk about the sleep in the immune system. Then we're going to dive into how sedatives like alcohol and stimulants such as caffeine play a role in our ability to sleep. And then we're going to finish off with talking about how sleep and those sedatives can impact our ability to fight off respiratory illness. Okay? Cool. Sound like a good trio right there?
Let's get to it.
Okay, all right. So we've got some cool studies I got here just to set the groundwork on how impactful immune system function is and how it plays with sleep, right? So Dr. Eric Prather at University of California, he measured the sleep of 150 men and women, all right, and then he shot the flu virus up their noses. Over the next week, he took blood samples, saliva samples, and all the mucus that he could get from them. He separated them into 4 subgroups based on how much they sleep. One group was less than 5 hours, the other was 5 to 6 hours, the next was 6 to 7 hours, and then the last was more than 7 hours, right? So close to that 8 hours we're supposed to get. Yeah. What he found was that the less sleep an individual was getting in the week before facing the virus, the more likely it was that they would become symptomatic. All right, so in those sleeping 5 hours, the infection rate was almost 50%. So you are 50% more likely to get the flu when he shot it up your nose, right, if you slept for just 5 hours or less.
That makes sense.
It makes sense, right? And then in those sleeping 7 hours or more, the infection rate was just 18%. So that means that just by sleeping, he was taking that flu virus. You didn't even have to pass by someone that had the flu. He was actually taking it and shooting it up the nose, and the chances of getting the flu was only 18%.
If you had slept an adequate amount.
Adequate 8 hours. Yep, 7 or more. That's crazy, right?
That is crazy.
So that means that you had a close to 20% chance of getting it if he was shooting it up your nose, if you got 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
So your immune system is fully capable of fighting off a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Just needs to make sure that you've got a lot of that immune system functioning optimally as it should at times prior to encountering the sickness, right? All right, then the second interesting study, also about the flu and the flu vaccine, right, was in 2002. They noticed how the sleep impacts the flu vaccine or the function of the flu vaccine. Mm-hmm. So they took healthy groups and separated them into 2 groups, all right? You separated one into 4 hours a night for 6 nights and the other one for 7.5 to 8 hours a night for 6 nights. At the end of the 6 nights, they were given the flu shot or the flu vaccine.
Yep.
Following? All right, so the participants of the 8 hours generated a powerful antibody reaction reflecting a robust, healthy immune system, right? So that means that the way that the flu vaccine is developed, right, they expect you to have a healthy immune response to it. Mm-hmm. By sleeping that 7 to 8 hours, you had an ideal or proper immune response to the flu vaccine. So it worked the way it was supposed to.
Okay.
All right. The less sleep group, the ones that slept for just 4 hours a night for 6 nights, produced less than 50% of the immune reaction that was supposed to take place compared to the slept group.
Nobody tells you that when you get the flu vaccine, though. Nobody says,
no one at all.
Hey, the only way this is really going to be beneficial is by you doing your part, get sleep. Nobody tells you that.
So if I was giving out the flu vaccine and you came in as a patient, the first question I should ask after reading these statistics right here is, have you slept 8 hours a night for the last 6 nights?
And if not?
Then come back, please, after you get 6 hours or you get 6 days of adequate 8 hours of sleep.
I just think it's interesting because I feel like every year there's always talk with the flu vaccine. Like, did you get it? Well, I got sick anyway, and it didn't work this year. It wasn't as effective. But is anybody really looking at the impact that sleep has on?
Not at all. And this is where you end up hopping, if you hop online and see a lot of these anti-vaxxers or pro-vaxxers, and all these arguments that they're getting in is that there's so many variables that take place, and you can see that in this study here, there's a 50% shift in how well the vaccine is actually going to function. I mean, you're diving... Just by sleep. Yeah, just by sleep. So 6 days of 8 hours of sleep. And you think about that with kids and all the concerns people have about vaccination with kids and all that. It's like, hey, I mean, we've got data here that shows that you need to sleep for 8 hours, for 6 nights prior to getting vaccinated in order to see optimal results from it. And it's just so valuable. No one ever, even when we're in chiropractic school, a lot of the sleep education that I've developed has been on my own. Even primary care doctors, they don't get any sleep education. Sleep education is something that's significantly lacking, but what we're finding is that it's hugely influential in the way that the immune system functions and how healthy we can be going forward. All right, so if that didn't get your appetite wet for, is that a saying?
Yes.
All right, if that didn't get it wet for how the immune system, how important sleep is with the immune system, we're now going to get into how sedatives and stimulants impact our ability to actually sleep, right? So we set the groundwork as to how valuable sleep is for immune system function. Mm-hmm. Now we got to make sure that we can get adequate sleep, those 8 hours of sleep every single night, right? So what are the 2 biggies that we talk about all the time? Sedatives. What's the key sedative? The key sedative that every every American does, every human does at night, that impacts your natural rhythms of sleep. Sedative is stuff like alcohol. Wine and alcohol. Right? So
it's heartbreaking.
Wine and alcohol sedates the body so that we don't get full, adequate brainwave patterns when we're sleeping. All right? So stuff like consuming alcohol or that nightcap can have impacts can have an impact on how your immune system functions, right? Because it is disrupting our ability to sleep, right?
Yeah.
So we may be having, if we have a nightcap, we may be having a less ideal sleep process that night, right? So if we go back to those studies, if we want to sleep for 6 days in a row of 8 hours of sleep, I mean, having that nightcap regularly can disrupt those 8 hours and put us at a disadvantage when we do end up encountering the flu or the common cold or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So do we take any liberties in trying to reduce our sedative intake during sickness seasons, during flu seasons?
I think in general we do, just based on...
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, probably.
I think, well, I would say, since you've done so much research on sleep and just between the two of us reading different books and whatnot about longevity and all that, but I think we've made a conscious effort more often than not, if we're going to have a glass of wine, we try to eat it at dinner.
Drink it.
Yes, thank you. Drink it at dinner, which means we've also shifted our dinner time much earlier.
Yes.
You know, when we can, we try to eat around 5:30. So if we're having a glass of wine, by the time, you know, dinner's over, it's only 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I notice a huge difference if I have a glass of wine just at dinner or if I have one after dinner in terms of the quality of my sleep.
And I would say that we're talking about sleep right now, and I don't have it here in front of me, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's research out there supporting the idea that the earlier you eat, the more immune system function takes place while you sleep, right? Because we've looked at in the past of just how much your body needs that freedom in that digestion, right? We don't want to be digesting food as we're sleeping. Sleep is really a time for immune system function, right? So
it's like the clearing out.
The cleansing of the body, really.
Yeah.
So we try to limit the consumption of the alcohol prior to bed. We actually had some wine last night, and I was thinking to myself, as I got up to get my next glass, I'm like, man, I should really probably start getting in the habit of not consuming any alcohol after a certain time, even on the weekends.
That's the hard part. I feel like during the week we're pretty good because we both have to work, and I think we're both pretty in tune with how, the lack of sleep can impact us at work. Even last week when I had a busier week than normal, and there was a few nights where I was like, you know what, I'm not going to have a glass of wine tonight because I need to be operating at, optimal function for these workshops that I had to run. So, but the weekends we tend to be a little more.
We indulge a little more. And
lax.
If we were to recommend to a patient, I would recommend, hey, you know what, you got to try to, during this flu season, especially now with the fear of the coronavirus coming and infecting more people, is we want to make sure that our immune systems are functioning as best as they can. So we want to make sure we really curb that intake, right? So the other thing we want to talk about here, we've got the alcohol, which is the sedative, and on the flip side, we've got the stimulant, the other side of the coin, right? So many times, Americans, or humans in general, will consume the sedative, and it will impact sleep. And then in order to feel awake the next morning, we take the stimulant, which is the coffee, which then impacts how well we sleep. So we drink the sedative, and we're constantly going back and forth with the sedative and stimulant in the morning and at night to impact our sleep and wakefulness throughout the day. So the ugly flip side is the caffeine, which is the coffee, right? So we drink coffee every single morning, right?
Yeah.
And how are you with coffee around times that you feel sick? Because when I start feeling like I'm getting run down a little bit, I try to consume more stimulant. I try to get more coffee.
Yeah, I guess.
Not as much. It doesn't impact you?
No. I tend to have an aversion to coffee.
Do you?
Yeah, which I guess probably works out for me.
Maybe the taste of the coffee I am not as into, but that's when I think of those energy drinks or think of those other stimulant type things like the 5-Hour Energy or the Monster Energy drinks, those types of things. So those are things to keep an eye on too, the actual consumption or draw towards the caffeine. It doesn't have to be the extra cups of coffee, but it could be the energy drinks and things like that. Because when you're sick, you are a little more run down, you're a little more tired, and nowadays we are so much is expected of us to continue to work. Right? So we are drawn towards those stimulants, and then the more stimulants you take, the harder it's going to be for you to sleep at the end of the day. Right? So those end of the day sleeps, or the caffeine through the beginning of the day, and then in the early afternoon around, say, 2 or 3 o'clock, especially around 2 or 3 o'clock, a big no-no, because that can disrupt how well you sleep at the end of the day, which can then progress the problem to the following day. Right? So we want to make sure that we keep an eye on that consumption. Okay? So we've got the sedatives and the stimulants. All right, and then we can talk about this last section here about the sedatives, sleep, and respiratory viruses, right? So this one kind of goes into how we have to keep an eye on, especially now with these respiratory viruses or these respiratory illnesses coming into the picture, right? Is that the reason respiratory illnesses such as coronavirus are such a big deal is because the way that there are deaths, or the way that it kills people, is that it impacts the lung system and then the heart and kidneys, right? So what ends up happening is it inflames the lungs so that there's less oxygen in the body, right? Less oxygen in the vascular system, which then causes the heart to race more, right? Because the heart it's looking for more oxygen, so the heart rate increases, and then the kidneys can become taxed too, right? So what we got to do if the lungs are taxed is we got to make sure that we're breathing as functionally as possible. So what happens with most of us is that most of us are accessory muscle breathers. We breathe with our lungs. Okay, I mean we breathe with our chest cavity as opposed to the diaphragm. So what ends up happening is, if you think about it, are you a snorer? Right? Do you snore? Do you have sleep apnea? All right. Do you have other breathing conditions such as asthma? Are you prone to pneumonia? Those types of things. Then there's no way that you are breathing with your diaphragm as efficiently as you should be, right? So you are at risk. If you develop a respiratory illness, you are at risk. You are at a higher risk of complications because of your inefficient breathing ability, right? So what we need to make sure everyone is doing is primarily doing nasal breathing, right? So nasal breathing is huge because there's a nerve that the vagus nerve goes down and interacts with the diaphragm when we breathe with our nose. So just by breathing in and out through the nose will cause you to breathe primarily with your diaphragm. Now, the vast majority of people with sleep apnea, they actually don't breathe well with their diaphragm. So they are losing out on a large portion of their lungs to end up absorbing that oxygen into the body. Okay, you following, Maureen?
I'm following. These are the things that
cause you stress. Yes. So what we want to do is we want to definitely set aside, just as we're talking about how we should really set aside time to improve our sleep habits, I would suggest all my patients set aside a time, hopefully around 5 to 10 minutes a day if they can. Better yet, find a thing that you do throughout the day, such as watching TV. We all watch TV. That we make a promise to ourselves to breathe only in and out through the nose, right? So when we breathe in and out through the nose on a regular basis for, say, a half hour during the show, we are going to be that more likely to breathe that way when we sleep. And that's the key, right? We want to make sure we're breathing nasally when we sleep. Because if we're breathing through our mouths, then we aren't as efficient breathers. And especially if we're sick, right, that's going to cause big implications. Because if we're sick, we're not breathing with the diaphragm, right? We're not getting as much or as efficient oxygen, carbon dioxide transportation through the lungs because we have that respiratory illness, right? We then are not sleeping as deeply, right? So it's diminishing our immune system, right? And then we're more likely for big-time complications, right? This is why the elderly have such higher numbers of complications from respiratory illness, is because they aren't efficient breathers. Usually, as we age, we develop poorer habits with breathing. All right? So do you set aside any time to breathe nasally?
Only when you remind me to.
It's hard. It's very, very hard.
It is, but
we've been trying to do it with the kids.
Yes, I was going to say, you've been good about trying to encourage that.
All right, so to summarize, we want to make sure that we get adequate sleep consistently over the course of flu season or newly coronavirus season, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that any condition such as a upper respiratory system issue, we want to make sure that we are sleeping very, very well prior to coming in contact with it, right? In order to sleep very well, we want to limit our sedatives and stimulant needs throughout the weeks, throughout the days, right? And we want to make sure that we are breathing efficiently. Nasal breathing, we want to make sure that we are breathing primarily through our nose. So in order to get our sleep, we want to make sure that we dim the lights, maybe read before bed, stay away from the white lights, right? That will get us our 8 hours of sleep. To reduce the stimulants and sedatives, we want to try to find something to replace those habits that we have. The end of the night, maybe get some non-caffeinated tea instead of that really helped us in limiting the alcohol at the end of the night. In the morning, you may find that a warm tea or even warm water can be helpful in simulating that same warm drink in the morning, all right? And then the breathing habits, we want to make sure that we set aside a time throughout the day, such as TV time at the end of the night or reading at the end of the day, even in the morning, a meditation time. Any time that lasts a period of time that you can just breathe in and out through your nose would be huge, okay? And then lastly, and the most important, is that chiropractic adjustments have been shown to improve and allow your body's immune system to function as optimally as it should during flu and sickness season, right? So by coming in and having us evaluate your spine and making sure that your nervous system is functioning as well as it should, that nervous system controls how our hormones and immune system function, right? So we want to make sure that your spine is as free of irritation as possible, right? So that's one of the things from the get-go when we're in chiropractic school is anytime, and if you know any chiropractors, we're all adjusting each other during the flu and sickness season because we know how impactful it can be to prevent and help you guys prevent widespread sickness, right? So I get adjusted I'll get adjusted every couple days, at least every week during this season, right? And I am someone that very, very rarely gets sick, okay? Whenever the boys are showing signs of something or you are showing signs of something, we always make sure that we get you guys adjusted, right? So Absolutely. That is a time for sure to be very consistent with your regular care or your regular treatment here at the office if you are someone that gets treated on a frequent basis like that and a preventative means like that. And it's certainly a time for you guys to rethink that the potential of being treated on a more frequent basis. Okay? Anything else?
No.
No? Awesome. All right, so I hope you guys like this one. For the Newman Experience channel, check out the audio version on the Newman Experience podcast and make sure to subscribe on both channels, right? So that we know how many people truly like listening to this because you guys speak very positively about it in the office and up when we see you out in public. So please share some comments and subscribe, and we'll see you next month. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.